Hello, everyone.
Is there anyone there?
Can
I think
Can you
you'll
hear
see
me?
them as they join.
Can you hear me?
I don't see you going live yet.
Oh, yeah, it's not started yet. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
I haven't gotten a notification that you've gone live yet.
Hello, everyone.
It should tell you how many people are in the room. Oh, here you are. Does it show that I'm in the room?
Mm-mm.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, Barb's watching. Barb Garthel's there.
Where do you see that?
Here.
Oh, up here?
Yeah. Wait. It's on my computer. You can see it. See, look. Barb Garfield is watching with you.
Oh, mine's not. It's not saying over here. Well, hello, everyone. How are you? We're going to wait a couple minutes yet. We've got until we begin, but I just wanted to log in since this is my first time using Facebook Live. So uh, welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple minutes.
The Nicholsons are here. Garfields are there. Lisa McCrossan is in. Chad is in.
Oh, here I see.
Is it showing you now?
Yeah. Well, it's not showing me who's on, but it is over on the sidebar. Some people are already commenting, so if you want to say hello and all that kind of stuff to them. See, there's got to be a.
Oh, look, 10 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't know who. And can you start with comment?
Sure.
Saying hello to everybody.
Right at the audience, 25 people. Do you have your volume on?
You should.
Okay, because I turned mine off because there's a delay and I don't want it to be echoey. It's freezing.
Hello, everyone that's just joined. Hopefully you can hear me. And we'll be getting started very shortly now. Barb. While we're waiting for the others, can everyone hear me?
There's like a 30-second delay.
So it's 5:30, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to Angelina's first ever virtual wine tasting. We're really excited to do this event, and we're very glad to have you online with us. I'm going to kind of go over some things first before we actually get started. That doesn't mean you can't go ahead and start drinking some wine, however, because after all, it is 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, which is here. We're coming live to you from Angelina's Ristorante here in Bonita Springs, and we're in the beautiful private dining room all by ourselves. I have Nick Catman, one of our other managers, here with me. He's going to answer comments as we go because we all know how easily I can get distracted sometimes. And so I do want you all to feel very free to ask questions and have comments. I'm going to pause during the presentation so that you all can ask some questions if you have them, or things you might want me to talk about. And so we will go ahead and get started. So again, the story behind this tasting, I miss all you guys and getting to talk about wine. And so we thought this might be a fun way to connect, and everybody can kind of participate from home and taste wine and have some antipasti. I know some of you got dinner, so feel free to eat that at any time that you would like to. Then another thing I already was asked was what's the story with how I had instructed you all to store the wines and when to open them. So I know we keep white wine in the refrigerator, but that's actually not a good idea for tasting because it's too cold. And when wine is too cold, it just dulls all of the flavors and the aromas. And so I wanted to give you all the time to have the wine warm up just a bit so that it's really expressive and speaking to you while you taste. And then in your packet, I had included some maps and things, and we will use those throughout the tasting. I also have some other things that I printed out to kind of show you as we go along. And also, too, if you have comments about the way you think a wine tastes, if you think it tastes like smells or tastes like zebra tears or overalls, speak up and say so, because sometimes it helps other people out too. So so let's get started here. So first thing I'd like to talk about is your antipasti that you have with you. So we have our pickled vegetables, which is just a melange of vegetables. There's cauliflower and carrots and all kinds of other things in there. Then we have our olives and we have three different types of olives. The really olive green color, like army green. The big ones, those are the Castelvetrano olives. I find those to be really have a lot of meatiness and almost like perfume to them. Very good. And then the lighter green ones, those are the Taggiasca olives. And so those I feel are probably a little more traditional in the way that you expect olives to taste. And then we have the black olives, which are the Gaeta olives. You have the grissini breadsticks, and then you have a couple different meats and cheeses. The ones that look like pepperoni, that's the spicy casalingo. And so just be aware that it is going to have a little bit of heat to it on the back end. And then we have our prosciutto di Parma and then the coppa. The prosciutto di Parma is the pink and it's like the longer ham. And then we've got a couple cheeses. So we've got Taleggio, there's Parmigiano Reggiano, and then what's the last one? The Bel Paese.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the some of you though, instead of Parmigiano Reggiano, have Pecorino Picante, and so they have the little red flakes in them. We ran out because we sold so many of these tonight, and so that made me very happy. I had to keep bugging Marcello and Kristen to get me more wine, and so I think I could have even have sold another case of each of the wines for today. But so welcome, we're very happy to have you. So feel free to eat and taste your wines and all that throughout the presentation. So the first thing that I gave you was the map of Italy. And so we're going to be tasting from two regions in Italy. We're going to be tasting from Veneto first, which will be your Zenato Pinot Grigio. And then we will taste two wines that are both from Tuscany. And we're going to talk about these wines and about the producers and what makes these wines so special. And also, too, we'll kind of talk about how you all feel about how the different wines pair with the different items on the antipasti. Because for Italians, wine is food. They do not drink wine like a cocktail. Americans do that. So they tend to want things to, what grows together goes together. But so Italy, again, long peninsula like Florida, surrounded by water on three sides. So yes, but there the similarities kind of end because they grow grapes in Italy from one end of the country to the other. And in fact, of the 20 regions, there's you can find over 1,300 different grape varietals and counting. In fact, they're still finding the oddball new grape that or rediscovered grape, I guess I should say, in someone's backyard, and it happens constantly. The country with the next most amount of grape varietals is France with about 600, and then Spain and Portugal have about 400 native grape varietals. So Italy by far outshines them, and so we're not going to taste all 1,300 tonight, but we are going to taste a couple different varietals tonight. So I also kind of wanted to show you, you don't have this map in your packet, but there in the Veneto, you can see to the north, it's very, very mountainous because of the Alps mountain range. And so the rest of the Veneto, which goes out to Venice and the lagoons of Venice and then on into the Adriatic, is very flat. It's one of the bread bowls of Italy. It's the Po River Valley. They grow lots of like risotto rice and just all kinds of different food products there in the very fertile valley. So once again, winemakers and farmers get along great because where the winemakers want to grow grapes, the farmers do not. And so by the same token, the flat valley floor, it's too fertile of a soil for the grapes, which much prefer supermodel diet, if you would. We're going to find that most of the major producing regions for the Veneto are kind of in the foothills of the Alps. There are some of the grapes that are grown in the flatter portions, but as we find out, in fact, the first wine that we're having tonight is the Zenato Pinot Grigio. It's della Venezia DOC. And so the thing to know about, because I know you're looking at your map of the Veneto and saying, well, it's got 4,000 different DOCs listed here. but I don't see the Della Venezia DOC. Well, and the reason for that is because the Della Venezia is a very, very large region. It encompasses Friuli, Venezia Giulia, all of Veneto, and then half of Alto Adige. So winemakers can source grapes from any part of that. And I will tell you that a lot of your cheap plonk Pinot Grigio that you buy at the grocery store for $5 a bottle, that is mass produced all throughout this region. This particular producer, however, is much, much higher end, higher quality Pinot Grigio. For the life of me, for the longest time, I could not understand why people liked Pinot Grigio and why it was one of the top selling white wine grapes in the world. But as you taste better Pinot Grigio, oh, the flavors of it, the aromas, it's so much more expressive and very, very delicious. And um, uh, there's about 62,000 acres planted for Pinot Grigio in the Veneto, Friuli, Venezia Giulia, and Trentino region of Alto Adige. So that's a lot of acreage. They're producing millions upon millions upon millions of bottles. And in fact, this particular producer, Zenato, across their entire production line, they produce about 2 million bottles a year. But that would be including their Amarone, their Valpolicella. They even make sparkling wine and other white wines. So it's not 2 million bottles of Pinot Grigio. But also too, there you can see where Verona is located on your map. Yeah, it's here by Lago di Garda. And so Verona happened here in the Veneto. Verona happens to be, even back to medieval times, a major crossroads. So if you were traveling from Venice across to Milan, you went through Verona. If you were traveling from Austria down to Rome, you were going through Verona. So Verona ends up being a very cosmopolitan kind of city. It's very beautiful, statuesque. There's more Roman ruins in this particular, and it's a very small kind of city. There's the only place that has more Roman ruins is Rome itself. They have a large Colosseum where during the Roman times they would have gone to see gladiatorial fights and chariot races and that sort of thing, and they now use it for opera. So just a beautiful city. If you ever get the chance to visit, you definitely should. And so we see all these regions kind of spread out around Verona. To the north, we have the Valpolicella region where Amarone, Ripasso, and are made. And Zenato, if you look at your map at the very bottom where it says Lugana and San Martino della Battaglia, that is where Zenato, their winery, is located. But they actually have property in the Valpolicella area and all across different parts of Italy. Like I said, they make everything from sparkling wine to dessert wine, white wine, red wine, rosé. Um, they're just an excellent producer. The property is very beautiful too. When I was there, we got to do a blending session, which was very humbling. They gave us the Zenato Ripasso, and then to try, and then we had all kinds of different the grapes, and we had to come up with closest to what we thought the blend of the Zenato Ripasso was. And yeah, that was not easy. So kudos to winemakers who are able to blend consistently year after year to have their wines taste fairly similar in these situations. Another very interesting effect that really, I think, tells in the grape, the wine itself, is the fact that you have the Alps very close by, but then you have Lago di Garda, and then you also have the Adriatic Sea. So you have the warmth of the Adriatic and Lago di Garda, and the coolness from the Alps. So it just takes the air and circulates it like a giant air conditioner. So they really don't have any worries about mold or pest problems. And so it makes wine growing much easier than some other regions of the world. And then let's talk about the Pinot Grigio grape itself. In fact, I'm going to grab my Pinot Grigio right now. So Pinot Grigio, the grape in Italian, Grigio means gray. Well, that doesn't sound very appetizing for a grape, but in all reality, the grape is not gray. It can range anywhere in color, the bunches, from like what you would expect to see on a white wine grape, but can have some pink tones and even to where some of the bunches are red. And so because the skins are thicker, it can sometimes kind of tint the wine to give it like a little bit of a copper color. And I can see that in this wine. If you tilt your wine and look over a white surface, you can flip one of your maps over if you want to use that. But the wine is nice and clear, but it does have just like if you took regular white wine and dropped a copper penny in it, that kind of little tint to it. Um, but yeah, and so like I mentioned, the skins are thicker on Pinot Grigio, so it tends to give a little bit of bitterness to the wine. But here in Italy, um, because they have this natural air conditioning system, so it's warmer during the day and cooler at night. It helps to preserve the acidity of the wine. And so Pinot Grigio can sometimes be a little fat and flabby. If you've ever had Pinot Gris from a Willamette Valley, sometimes those can get where the acid is low and it just feels like a couch potato when you're tasting it. But so this particular wine, yeah, I think there's plenty of floral notes to this and like lemon, apple, citrus. Uh, but let's give it a go. I'm sure you all have already tasted. Mm. Oh, that's delightful, and I can't wait to drink the rest of that later. Um, but so, yeah, again, on the palate, Pinot Grigio, because they tend to age it on its like with the lees. So this lees gives this creaminess across the palate, and yet the acidity, like my mouth is still watering. And so the reason I chose this wine to go with the antipasti is because the fats from the meats and the cheeses, that acidity is going to, like, because the fat coats your palate and then the acidity is going to strip it off. So it makes you want to take another bite of cheese, and then you have to have more wine, and then you have to have more cheese. And so you end up eating a lot more cheese and drinking a lot more wine than perhaps you meant to. But that's why we're here tonight. So, I would like to see if anybody had any questions. I know Nick's kind of been talking to you all, um, but uh, if you had any questions about the Pinot Grigio or anything like that, I would love to hear about it. So I'll give you a minute to type anything in. So,
Yeah, and look through the comments. There's quite a
oh,
few
okay.
people. Marcello's and Jamie P popped in.
Yes, of
Donna
course,
popped
Marcello,
in.
you love Zenato. All right.
So what do you get like on the nose for the
Okay,
Zenato?
Nick asked me what do I get on the nose for the Zenato, and like I mentioned, I get some floral notes there, and the citrus, and maybe even like nectarine or like a white peach kind of tone. And then on the palate, again, that creaminess, the acidity, the alcohol is nice and low on this, so you can have more than a glass, and you're not gonna fall down when you stand up. Um, yeah, it's just beautiful. Love this wine. And I will tell you something. Here at Angelina's, we carry a lot of Zenato products. And in fact, the servers, one of their favorite wines is the Zenato Ripasso. And during season, we'll sell a case a week just because the servers recommend it to tables. Have yet to have anybody not like that wine. I always tell all of our guests, if you try the Zenato Ripasso and you don't like it, it's fine. We'll get you something else. And the staff is going to jump up and down in the back when they get to drink it at the end of the night. So, but I always say that we put Zenato's kids through college. So, cheers, Zenato. Yeah, I got asked, is Pinot Grigio still very popular by the glass at the restaurant? Yes, it is. We sell lots and lots of Pinot Grigio. Uh, Artists also like Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc for whites by the glass. We sell a lot of Pinot Noir, Chianti, and then one of the favorites too is the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo that we sell by the glass. And that's one of Marcello's competitors. So, sorry, Marcello. But but so if I think we'll and Barb's asking, why doesn't it taste like grapefruit like most Pinot Grigio? And it's because, again, they're in the Veneto with the air circulating like it does and having the warmer days, the fruit gets riper. And so we get away from those like really underripe citrus tones and more to the riper side. So this is more like for the citrus, more like a Meyer lemon or even like maybe a tangerine or tangelo or something like that. Um, Oh, good. I'm glad Ms. Martino, I'm glad you like the Pinot Grigio. So I know somebody did not want to have the Pinot Grigio. They wanted to get all reds. And so hopefully, but Katie talked you into getting the Pinot Grigio. So hopefully you're enjoying that. So we're glad you did. So, all right. I think we'll go ahead and move on to our next wine. Oh, I meant to ask. So, are any of you finding a particular cheese or meat or olives or something to be really outstanding to you as a pairing with the Pinot Grigio? I know we're on a bit of a time delay, so.
Just all of it.
Nick said, just all of it. All of it tastes great. Nick and I like our cheese.
Sure do.
Good. I'm glad you like the wine. Oh, like olives. And so you've got a couple different cheeses. Barb likes with the olives too. So the softer cheese, the really soft one, it's kind of a little bit funkier on the nose, is the Taleggio. And then we've got Parmigiano Reggiano, which is the really like when you bite into the cheese, it's almost got like a crunch to it. And like a saltiness. And then the Bel Paese is also a softer cheese, but not as soft as that Taleggio. So. Oh, yeah, and some of you have that Pecorino Picante, so that's one of y'all's favorite. Good, I'm glad everybody liked the Pinot Grigio. I see what I mean about Pinot Grigio? You can understand how you can love Pinot Grigio when it tastes like that. It's just absolutely delicious. So, all right, so we are headed off to Tuscany. So you have your map of Toscana, and so the first wine we're going to be tasting is the producer is San Felice. I love this bottle. Isn't this label gorgeous? And so this is their Chianti Classico Reserva 2014. And so this one for me I just thought this was very outstanding. So so for Tuscany, we're looking here, this like pink in the very center of the map. That's Chianti Classico. So I also put together another, you can kind of see looking at your map. So I outlined it with a magic marker. So there's Chianti and then there's Chianti Classico. And we're going to talk about what the differences between those two things are. So on the map, what I have outlined here with the marker is regular Chianti. And notice the pink is in the center there. That's Chianti Classico. So then I was not done with my magic marker. So I went through and outlined Chianti Classico itself. Okay, so notice there's a big, huge difference between the two. All right, one's much smaller and one's much larger. Okay, so what does that mean when we talk about Chianti Classico? So those of you that have attended some of my classes before, you know that the difference between Classico means heart of the region. All right. So as we can see, Chianti Classico is literally the heart of the Chianti region. All right. So there are all kinds of different subzones of Chianti. There's Chianti Rufina, Colli Senese, and Colli Fiorentino, and all kinds of different subregions of Chianti itself. Chianti is a DOCG, all right, but so is Chianti Classico, and it's separate, all right. And in fact, I have a map here. That's a much bigger map of Chianti Classico, okay. And so yeah, so Tuscany is named after the Etruscans, which were the original tribe to live in this region. They fought wars with the Romans and were eventually conquered by the Romans to the south. There was lots of fighting back and forth. And so I will tell you that probably Tuscany can take the prize for the most like confusing region of Italy. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there about Chianti, Super Tuscans, Brunellos. In Tuscany, we find everything. There's white wine, there's red wine, there's rosé wine, dessert wine. They make grappa. So some of the wines are blends. There are some that are just straight varietals. And so it can be very, very confusing. So if on your map of Tuscany, you will notice that to the north is the town of Firenze or Florence, and to the south of Chianti Classico is Siena. Okay, and back in like medieval times, these two cities were constantly at war. We'll notice who's between them. Chianti Classico. So a lot of times there was a lot of fighting and bloodshed going on in the in Chianti Classico. So also on your map, there's an inset here up to the top right of Chianti Classico, and these are the different towns and areas in Chianti Classico. And the original Chianti Classico was um, Castellina in Chianti, Rada in Chianti, and Gaiole in Chianti. And so notice where the actual dots are. These were forts that were there for Florence to protect themselves from the south. If they saw any of the armies coming from Siena, they would send off riders to alert the town of Florence so they could turn out the troops for battle. But Florence itself is a very like Renaissance city. If you look at the pictures of the building and pictures of Florence, and I know probably many of you have been there, yeah, much more Renaissance in style, whereas Siena is much older and it's very Gothic in nature. And so there's a very big contrast between those two cities. And so another thing I wanted to talk about too, this little label on the back, well here I'm pulling the bottle the wrong way, but it says DOCG on it, and this is called a Bolini, a Bolino, because that's one, Bolini for two. But so these labels are affixed to bottles of DOCG, and so they come in different colors, and so if it's black, that's, you see the where we've got the beige on the side. Oop, I'm not holding it right. The beige on the side is where you would see that black color. It means it's for early drinking. And then if the color is silver, it's best to wait about 18 months for the wine. And if you see the beige like that, it's at least around 3 years you should wait to have the wine, and it's Reserva level. So just an interesting little fact. And so we mentioned about Classico is the heart of the region, but there's also another word on this label which says Reserva. So what does Reserva mean? Reserva generally refers to that there should be extra aging for the wine. Sometimes it can, depending on what region you're in or DOC, they may have requirements that the alcohol also be a little higher. So in this particular case, Reserva needs to be aged for 24 months. There's a new designation now in Chianti Classico called Gran Selezione, and that has to be aged for a minimum of 30 months. But this is the Reserva. There's a lot of producers that choose not to make the Gran Selezione because they always felt that the Reserva was the top of their line, and they don't intend to, throw their beautiful Reserva under the bus by making a Gran Selezione. And so then there's another word that can appear on a label, superiore. And so that generally would refer that generally means higher alcohol. Okay, so not always a bad thing. So, but so then another interesting feature, and I know everybody talks about this all the time, is the little black rooster on here. That's the Gallo Nero, and so uh, legend has it that how this became the symbol of the Chianti Classico region is the story goes that Florence and Siena decided they wanted to fix the boundaries so they could quit having these constant wars between the two towns. So they each decided that at dawn, when the cock crowed, they would send a rider out from the gates of their city, and where the two riders met on the road would become the boundary for Chianti between the two. Not the boundary for Chianti Classico, I'm sorry. But so the Florentines were very wily, and they kind of starved their cockerel for a few days. So their cock crowed at 3 o'clock in the morning. So the rider set off at 3 o'clock in the morning. He got almost to the gates of Siena, and when Siena's rider met him on the road. And so that is the story of the Gallo Nero, the black cockerel. And so that's why Chianti Classico decided to choose that as their emblem or symbol for their wines. Just a cute little story, I think. Another very interesting fact about Chianti is it's one of the first regions in the world to have been classified as its own region instead of just growing grapes and that comes from here or there or whatever. So Grand Duke Cosimo III, he was a Medici. He designated those three original towns that I told you about as the Chianti Classico region. And so, and then something very bad happens to Chianti, and it's due to a gentleman called Barone Bettino Ricasoli. Okay, and so he decides that people are calling all these wines Chianti, and none of them taste the same, and that they should have like a kind of a regional identity. So he comes up with a formula, and this is in 1872, that the and chooses Sangiovese and other grapes like Colorino and Canaiolo, but then he also feels that white grapes need to be included in this, and so it ends up being a disaster in the long run because Trebbiano and Malvasia, you can grow lots of grapes really easily, whereas Sangiovese is a fussy little 4-year-old child that throws a tantrum, too hot, too cold, so like kind of Goldilocks kind of wine. And so it was much easier to grow these white grapes. So pretty soon, we have what happens in the 70s to poor Chianti Classico and Chianti itself is that they get watered down so much with white grapes that it's just becomes this cheap plonk wine. And in fact, those of you who are my age or older will remember being in college and you would go and buy the bottle that came with the straw basket. And I'm not going to lie, I was in college, so, I drank it. And then you jam a red candle into the top of the bottle and let the wax melt all down the side. And so, but that particular bottle is called a fiasque, and that is where we get the word fiasco from, because that's what Chianti became at that time. Since then, in fact, right now, Chianti Classico cannot include any white grapes in it. In fact, Chianti Classico has to be a minimum of 80% Sangiovese, and then 20% can be other local varietals like Colorino or Canaiolo, but it can also be Cabernet or Merlot. A few other varietals are permitted too, some really interesting native varietals as well. But so it's to assure that Chianti tastes like Chianti. And um, yeah, in this particular wine, the San Felice Il Grigio is 100% Sangiovese, and it's aged for 2 years in about 50% large Slovenian oak, and then 50% smaller French barrels. And then it's aged an additional anywhere from 8 months to a year in bottle. So they have gone way beyond the aging requirements required for Reserva. And in fact, I haven't tasted this yet, so let me grab it. And and I did want to tell you the picture on the label. Okay, first of all, I spent probably an hour looking this up. What did Il Grigio di San Felice mean? And all I know is Il Grigio means the gray, and so I couldn't even find on their website what that meant. The painting on the label, though, is by Titian, and it's of a medieval knight in armor.
So while you're tasting that too, Michelle Johnson would like to know if you speak Italian, and Barb would like you to repeat the information about the colors on the DOC label.
Oh, okay. So Nick just told me you all had some questions for me, so yay. Okay, so wanted to Miss Garfold wanted me to repeat about the colors on the label here. So if the side, like you can see the little side here is that beigey kind of goldish color. I'm having trouble figuring out how I'm supposed to turn stuff here. But so it is, if it's black, if that stripe would be black, it means it's for early drinking. Go ahead and drink it. If it has silver, that would be wait about 18 months before you drink it. And then if it's the beigey gold color, you can go ahead and wait for 3 years to drink that wine. A lot of times the producers wait that long. So like when the Reserva came out, if that's the criteria, you would then drink it at that time. And then what else did you tell me they wanted to know?
Do you speak Italian?
Oh, do I speak Italian? No, I just play an Italian on TV. Thank you. Okay, so for this particular wine, oh, it's so pretty. I find this one to have some floral notes to it too. Things like maybe like some rose petals or even like geraniums. And I will tell you, Sangiovese, like I said, it tends to be a little fussy, okay, to grow. But so the skins are very thin on the grape. The grapes don't even ripenly on Sangiovese. Like so, you'll have some grapes that are completely ripe, while some others are still even green when they're harvested. And so it's yeah, I wrote down spoiled 4-year-old child, like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just got to be just right. And but Sangiovese, okay, is a fantastic food wine. Okay, I don't know I'd want to sit here, well, maybe this one, but I don't know I'd want to sit here and drink an entire glass just on its own. That, again, the Italians treat wine like food, and so it goes with food. But Sangiovese tends to be moderate plus acidity, moderate plus alcohol, moderate plus tannin. And the fruit profile for me for Sangiovese tends to be very red fruit driven, like red cherries. But we're in the old world, so it's not always about fruit in the old world. And so I always find like these farm garden notes to Sangiovese. So things like oregano and thyme, and maybe even a touch of rosemary, and things like tomato leaf and bay leaf. And so Sangiovese also too, for me, tends to be very savory. There's an umami quality to Sangiovese. So like you can almost even get balsamic notes or mushroom truffle kind of notes. And then the other kicker for me for Sangiovese is I always get like an orange rind to it. But so yeah, just very complex, and when they're made well, they're so delicious. Yeah, I even wrote down like potpourri. So for Sangiovese, if somebody likes Napa Valley Cabernet, maybe this is not the wine for you. But somebody that likes Pinot Noir, oh, you're going to be in love with this. I can't see how you would not like that if you liked Pinot Noir. I will say that Sangiovese, like we talk about wines being like powerful and big, and powerful and big doesn't always mean like super ripe fruit bombs and tons of oak. It can refer to the structure. And this wine is very structure heavy because, again, that acid, alcohol, and tannin are all elevated on this wine. So with that acid, though, it drives right through the fat of the cheese and the meats, and like with the olives, that just absolutely fantastic, I'm sure. This is Italy's most planted wine grape. In fact, I always tell my staff when we do training, I'm like, I think the Italians try to grow Sangiovese probably in places it shouldn't even be attempted to be grown. I had to laugh the first time I went to Italy. The bus took us from the hotel to the tasting at Vin Italy, and I laughed to see people growing wine grapes like vines out at their mailboxes at the side of the road where we would plant roses or something like that. And so I think grapes would grow out of cracks in the sidewalk if you would let them in Italy. It's just absolutely beautiful. And then, yeah, so I already talked about this wine, the aging and that sort of thing. It is, like I mentioned, 100% Sangiovese, so you can really get what the taste of Sangiovese is on this wine. So I'd like to hear from everybody any questions that you have, or what the favorite pairing was with the Sangiovese. And also, too, do you find that it changed, like when you tasted the wine before you tasted the food with it, did it change the taste of the wine or change the taste of the food in any kind of way for any of you? I'm laughing at Marcello. She does speak Italian only with me. Yeah, I called him yesterday and screamed, "Buon pomeriggio!" on the phone.
What does that mean?
Good afternoon.
Oh,
Yeah.
my mom all the way in Fort Wayne, Indiana found us.
Nick's mother. Hi, Nick's mom. She apparently found us from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, well, welcome aboard.
Lord.
Yeah.
She's
All
always
right.
there.
I see Nick found the menu for you, Mrs. Martino. All right. I will give another minute before any questions about that particular wine. Oh, good. You liked it with the fennels on the olive soften the wine. Nice. And it made the cheese, not the Parmigiano. Good. Good. Yeah. Wine is fun. I think so. Mm. We'll also enjoy you later. Okay. So let's see. And I think if you can take care of, love the meats with the Chianti. Good. Yeah. Oh, and I will say, I mentioned about Chianti being very Sangiovese being very savory, and so it can pair very well with tomato-based dishes. So if you've got like a red pasta sauce, or even the pizza with the red sauce on it, um, it it makes it a great pairing partner, because sometimes tomato is very difficult to pair with wines. Um, Oh, yeah. So key difference between Chianti and Chianti Classico, just got asked. Um, so the difference between the two, we could see that the one region is much, much larger. And so I would recommend to all of you, I don't mean to be a wine snob here, because there are plenty of good Chiantis, but you have to know the producer. Chianti Classico, oh, in fact, I have a super duper map, and it's very big, so I'm going to have to get up. But yeah, so this map, in fact, here, let me try and get her up a little closer here. But so you can see this actually lists all of the individual producers and where they're located in Chianti Classico. And down here at the bottom, over here, is our San Felice. So they're at the very southern end. So they were probably Siena fans at one time, I'm guessing. So the difference between the two, there are different. Chianti only needs to be 70% Sangiovese, and then they can still blend with white grapes. That is still permissible. They don't have to, they're not required to, but it's still allowed. Whereas in Chianti Classico, it's a minimum of 80% Sangiovese and no white grapes are allowed. Aging requirements are a little different between the two, with Chianti Classico generally having the higher aging requirement. Also, alcohol too has to be a little higher in Chianti Classico than it does in Chianti itself. So those are a couple of differences between them. Like I said, if you're going to go out and buy Chianti, get a Chianti Classico, because overall, I think they're more expensive, but sometimes you do in wine get what you pay for. And I would say the same for Pinot Grigio too. Do not opt for the low end, because then it's just lemon flavored water with a little bit of alcohol in it. So, all right, good question. I love that. All right, I like that you said that, Miss Fitzgerald, that it made the wine less acidic, or I tasted less tannins. And food does do that. Yeah, it's going to reduce the tannins. It's also going to reduce the alcohol. Um, uh, yeah, and the fat from the cheese will reduce the acid, but the acid then strips the fat off your tongue from the cheese. So that's a good distinction. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Ms. Mahoney. Love that. Um,
Decent.
oh, and I love this comment. Before you asked about the flavor changing, I had eaten a breadstick and the flavor exploded. So cool with a breadstick. Yeah, so I love it. Yes, Marcello, it is a beautiful map. I believe you gave that to me. Thank you. Uh, Good. I'm glad everybody enjoyed that wine. I thought that was absolutely delightful. And sometimes it's nice when the packaging is so pretty too, right? All right. So now we're going to taste Super Tuscan, okay? And we got to go over the myths about Super Tuscans and that sort of thing, because I hear all kinds of stuff when I talk to tables. And in fact, I had a comment from one of my servers that I'll go over in just a little bit that I was like, oh my goodness. But so again, we're back to our map of Tuscany, and you will find Bolgheri right over here on the coast. It's the dark green. Um, and I actually have a map that it goes this way, but this is the way it looks on the coast. All right. And I did not print this map out for you because honestly, I had to get and I have the best up close eyesight. Like I don't need to wear little cheater glasses or anything like that. And this is so tiny. I had to go get a magnifying glass and then use the even littler part in there to even find where Grattamacco was. But I will tell you, so very famous. In fact, the most famous wine in Italy. It's the only DOC that's a monopole that's named after a wine. It's Bolgheri Sassicaia. So the wine itself is Sassicaia. It's made by Tenuta San Guido, probably the most famous, all right, wine in Italy. Considered extremely high-end, high quality, up there with Ornellaia and Tignanello and Celaya, and notice all these ayas in the names. And so it's. I will tell you that on this little map here, we have Sassicaia. I got to go the opposite way. So Sassicaia and Ornellaia are here, here, and then right next to them is Grattamacco, right over here. So very close proximity. So this wine is a Super Tuscan. Now, Super Tuscan, I've had people tell me that, oh, it has to be, Super Tuscans are blends and Chianti is just Sangiovese. Well, as we already talked about Chianti and Chianti Classico, Chianti only has to be 70% Sangiovese, and Chianti Classico only needs to be 80% Sangiovese. So they can be blends. They can also be 100% Sangiovese. The Super Tuscans kind of are the same thing. Like they can be blends. A lot of them are blends, but some of them can be 100% Sangiovese. Some of them can be 100% Cabernet Sauvignon or 100% Merlot. Um, like how I would describe this wine. So producers Grattamacco, they're very, very humble people because like you may need your glasses, but just right down here in this tiny little tape is where it says Grattamacco. You can see better on the back label where it says Grattamacco. But yeah, their wine is Bolgheri Rosso, and it is a blend. It's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon. There's Merlot, Cab Franc, and a little splash of Sangiovese, if I'm not mistaken. And their first vintage that they made was 1982, and that was even before Bolgheri was DOC. And so they were the original one to call it Bolgheri Rosso. So that's why they display that so prominently on the label. But so, and I've also been heard, like I heard one of my servers telling another server that Super Tuscans were more expensive and Chiantis were cheaper. Well, and that's not true either, because Super Tuscans can range in price anywhere from, say, $12 to, well, you name it if you can want to pay for it. But yeah, they can be uh, like I said, blends or anything. So I mentioned that a Super Tuscan can be 100% Sangiovese. So why wouldn't you call it Chianti or Chianti Classico? Well, because that they're maybe not located in the region of Chianti Classico. They may be outside of the region and they want to make 100% Sangiovese. Or, and this whole idea of Super Tuscan, by the way, that's a made up word that our press here in the United States calls these wines because it sounds very catchy and sexy. And so, uh, but the idea was originally you had the DOCs and the DOCGs. Okay, and now I'm going to pronounce those for you. In Italian, DOC is Denominazione di Origine Controllata. And then DOCG adds a garantita, like they're guaranteeing that your wine is so much better. So DOC is lower than DOCG uh, in the rung of things. Okay, now remember I mentioned about the 1970s and Chianti and these cheap wines, and they're adulterating them with all kinds of these whites added in large quantities, and the wines are selling for, well, in the 70s probably, I don't know. I don't even know if I paid $5 for that. Well, not the 70s. I'm sorry, but in the 80s, even then. But meanwhile, I mentioned about Sassicaia and Ornellaia. So in the case of Sassicaia, supposedly the legend goes that the Marchese was good friends with the Baron de Lafitte Rothschild in France. And so he took cuttings from this first growth vineyard in Bordeaux of Cabernet and brought them back to Bolgheri and planted them. And because Bolgheri, that was where his summer hunting lodge was located. And so, la-di-da, that, he was also growing grapes on his estate. And so he made wines just for the family. And so that happened for about the first 20 years that Sassicaia they only drank within the family. And then one of the nephews encouraged him to sell the wine publicly. And so he wanted to make Cabernet. Well, guess what? There is no Cabernet that was there in Tuscany. And so he couldn't label his wine as anything but Vino da Tavola. But because this wine was so popular when it came out, he was able to charge 10 times what producers in Chianti and Chianti Classico, DOCG, were charging. And here it is, Vino da Tavola. So it was kind of very embarrassing for the Italians because it showed like the flaws in their DOC and DOCG system. So what happened was in 1992, they passed the Gorizia laws, which now introduced a new intermediate level between Vino da Tavola and DOC. And it's called IGT, which stands for Indicazione Geografica Tipica. Okay, so typical from the region it's from. Okay, so meanwhile, they're still now, I think on our list, Sassicaia is $450 a bottle, and yet I have Chianti Classico on my list. Some of them, they probably start at $50. So there is still a discrepancy. But once you get to the IGT level, you can then be promoted to DOC, which happened with Bolgheri, Sassicaia. They have to wait a certain amount of years, and then it will become DOCG. And in fact, they're talking that eventually they may go up a level even higher and make it the one exception in all of Italy for Sassicaia. So very famous wine. But so now let's get back to Grattamacco, because the Grattamacco, I feel, okay, so Sassicaia, 75% of all Sassicaia production leaves the country of Italy and it goes elsewhere. And a large chunk of it comes to the United States. Only 25% of Sassicaia is drunk within the confines of Italy. Grattamacco, on the other hand, only 25% is exported and 75% is drunk by the Italians. All right. So Grattamacco, I feel like, who's that? And again, this is another wine I rant and rave about to tables because the value of this is $99 on our list compared to Sassicaia's $450. Am I saying this is Sassicaia? I'm not. But this is so outdrinks its class. It's not funny. It's absolutely exquisite wine. And this is another one I tell the tables, if you don't like it, just let me know. We'll get you something else. I can't recall ever having anybody not like this wine. Now, the nice thing I mentioned about the blend, it's got the Cabernet, the Merlot, and it's also aged in French oak barrels, small French oak. And they're on Bolgheri because they're so much closer to the Tyrrhenian Sea, the Mediterranean, that the grapes have a much easier time getting ripe. Okay, sometimes Cabernet can struggle sometimes to get ripe, not in California, but here. And so they're being on the coast. It really prefers that. And so I feel like this is a great Italian wine to give to our guests that maybe like California, because it has that riper fruit note. It has that oak that they're used to tasting in wines. And so it's like my gateway drug to Italy from Napa. But so, yeah, just absolutely delicious wine. The other thing I want to mention too is very fascinating about Bolgheri. So Bolgheri used to be a swamp, okay, and so um, nobody lived out this way because it was swampland. So if you did, like there was the fear of getting malaria, and then not only that too, there were Moorish pirates that would come and raid the coast, and so you didn't want to be hauled away in a Moorish ship and be forced to row the boat. And so, but during actually prior to World War II and possibly during some of it, Mussolini actually drained the swamps. And so when the swamps in this area, so when they drained it, much like Bordeaux, where the Danish drained the swamps there in Bordeaux, and it revealed all this gravel soil. Well, guess what? Cabernet's favorite soil to grow in is gravelly soil. And so Cabernet has definitely found a home in Tuscany. Its popularity, I think, it's very much an international traveler. It goes, across places very, very well. There are some grapes that don't like to travel. Sangiovese really just likes Tuscany, a couple other places in Italy. I have tried Sangiovese from Washington State. I've tried Sangiovese from California, and it tastes nothing like Sangiovese. So Sangiovese for me is very site specific. Um, what else did I want to tell you here? Uh, and I left. I found this here in my notes when I was kind of reviewing yesterday. It is said that noblemen make the best wines and peasant women the best food. So kind of good. All right. Let me give the Grattamacco a go. And also, too, I'd like for you to, if you have in separate glasses, to take a look over a piece of white paper, the difference in color between these two wines. So your Chianti Classico, you can read, you could read a newspaper through this, and it's got very much a ruby color, and it kind of has a little bit of orange tint to it, or garnet tint. And because Sangiovese is very prone to oxidation, it doesn't mean it's oxidized. Or you can sometimes mistakenly call red wines older if you see that kind of oranging or bricking to the wine. But yeah. And then looking at the Grattamacco, this has much more of a purpley hue to it. There's still ruby, and it's also deeper colored. It's much more difficult to read through this wine than it was through the Sangiovese. So, oh yeah, oh goody, these are all delish. Yeah, and this I'm starting to get some more black fruits, whereas the Chianti Classico was much more red fruit driven and that herbal note. This just smells like really nice and black fruity, like black blackberries, black plums. There's some red fruit there too. I even get like a touch of raspberry. There's some chocolate tones, maybe some things like violets and lavender. Today must be a flower day.
Look at Barb's.
Okay, so this one, there's some grip on the palate there. All right, you can feel that. This because this is a 2018. This tannins were much tamer on the Sangiovese, but this has not really aged yet. I could see this aging for some amount of time. Uh, yeah, and again, getting that black fruit profile, it may have driven out the red fruit profile on the palate. Tasting that oak, because I'm getting that cocoa, vanilla, kind of baking spice, cinnamon, and maybe even clove or cardamom to it. Now we are in Italy, so there is still that herbal note. And because we've got Cabernet, there's a chemical component in Cabernet called pyrazine. All right, well, that doesn't sound too wonderful, but pyrazine, uh, this particular chemical compound, can taste like green bell peppers or jalapeno or like even cut grass. Um, and so I feel that coming through on the finish, like where it's just this slightly underripe kind of tone to it. Um, and I guess I would like to see if any of you have any questions for me. I see, Barb, that you have asked, are we going to see Chef Ryan? And oh, I tell you, I wanted to, he showed me yeah, he got a Katie do because his hair was getting too long during the coronavirus lockdown. So he had Katie clip him up, and I am so ashamed to tell you, he has a mullet. So, yeah. So I think Nick went to go grab him, so he may not come out though. I think he's pretty proud of it though. So he's having fun with it, I guess. Okay, okay. So Ms. Martino says that Dad says this wine is better with cheese than meat for him. Okay. Oh yeah, I can see that too. Yeah, yeah. This might not be that great with that, with the especially the spicy one, the Casalingo, because when you have tannins like that and a little bit higher alcohol, in fact, what is our alcohol on this particular wine? It is 14%. Yeah, spice can just, oh yeah, it's not so great. So I can definitely see the cheese though, because it probably softening those tannins right out. Um, yeah. And let's see what other. I see. Nick answered Mr. Fitzgerald's question about which entrees they would like. Yes, Chef makes the breadsticks. Yeah, yeah. In fact, they make them pretty much almost a day back in the kitchen. When is the optimum time to drink this wine? From Miss Fitzgerald. I would say, I don't know. I drink this like you left it open, or you put this in a decanter. Um, you might be able to drink it in a couple hours. It would tame it down a little bit, but I feel like it's pretty tight. It's like wound up, like hard sprung, like you overwound a clock or something, and it just needs a little bit time to calm down. And when you give wine time, so like I can very distinctly taste those tannins. I can taste the acid, and I can taste the alcohol. I'm feeling that alcohol right here in the chest. When you leave the wines to age for a little bit, all that just kind of meshes together. It's like when you make soup. All right, it might be good the first day, right? But it's always better the second day because all the flavors, all the spices, everything has come together and it's got to sit together and play together for a while, and it's much more integrated on the second day. So this wine, I would probably say I would give that I don't know. You could give it another couple years. That would probably even age for like I would probably still enjoy drinking that probably about 10 years from now. I don't know. I'd go much further with that one. Now, Bolgheri does make their Bolgheri. I'm sorry, Grattamacco does make their a Bolgheri Rosso Superiore. Okay, and that's quite a kind of a step up. Like they ratchet up the oak, the alcohol's a little higher. That one I would say could probably age for quite a great deal of time. Good question. Yeah, and yes, Johnson, I would say yes, definitely better a year from now. Uh, yeah, I would save it. Go ahead and save it, and it'll be fun. And in fact, if you, I enjoy doing this, and I actually type up my tasting notes. Excuse me. Um, but so if, uh, like, I always find it so amazing when I go back and I taste a wine later to see, am I still calling these, like I called black fruits and red fruits on the nose, am I still calling the same thing? Or has it changed? Or has it kind of stayed similar in profile? Yeah, it makes it a lot of fun. Um, and Rosso means red on the label, Mr. Curtis. I'm sorry, Miss Curtis. I read and never mind. Sorry. But yeah, Rosso means red, and Bianco would be white. And so they actually do make a Bianco or Blanco, can be. Let's see. Oh, I see. Yeah, I think I already answered kind of how long the Bulgari can lay down. Okay, cheeses other than the Parmigiano Reggiano. We've got Taleggio, it's spelled Tallegio, and then we have Bel Paese, and that's spelled Bel, new word Paise. Correct? Oh no, Paese.
Well, I just spelled it Paise, so
Okay, I see. He's got it. Yeah.
I don't know. I have it right here.
Yeah, and then some of you have the Pecorino Picante. So, all right. And full disclosure here, Marcello, his wines, a lot of you know Marcello Palazzi. He's with Winebow, and two of these wines are his, the first and the last one. And then the second wine I got from Breakthrough Beverage. So just, I think, really a fantastic lineup of wines. I'd like to hear everybody. Um, uh, oh, okay, so I'm getting asked, but Rosso Superiore means better than Rosso. It's yes, it's not really a classification. The classifications are DOCG at the top, DOC, IGT, and then just Vino di Tavola. But this is a qualification to those. So it would still be, it's either going to be DOC, DOCG, IGT, and then they add the word superiore. And generally, superiore requires a higher alcohol. Which means technically that the grapes are a little riper in order to achieve that higher alcohol content. Oh, okay. Oh, I love that you asked me this, Miss Fitzgerald. That was on my list about how long can you keep these wines since there's two of you drinking them. Um, in my house, it wouldn't be long. But anyway, what I would suggest is you putting the corks back into the wines. You can put them in the refrigerator, or you can put them back into your cuvee if you have one. And honestly, if you put them in the fridge, you're going to get days and days out of them. In fact, I was talking with our owners, and she asked me about a wine aging, and I said I've been sometimes simply amazed. I always smell because I'll go back to a wine, and I'm like, oh, how did I was drinking the rest of that? Now I got to dump it down the drain. I always check it because I have been amazed sometimes at how long wines can last, and then I'm appalled at other times that I'm like, this wine was so good yesterday. Why does it taste like this today? It was one day. And so, but put them in the fridge. They will last longer. Just make sure you take them out and let them warm up a little bit before you go on and drink them. And you'll be able to tell when they start to turn. They just kind of start to just taste flat and uninteresting. So you should be able to finish all of those. I have confidence in you. All right. Uh, show us the mullet. uh,
How about this
Oh, it's
question?
Dr. Triana. Hello, how are you? I missed seeing you. Uh, okay, so the $99 bottle of wine that I would put up against the $450 Sassicaia is this, the Grattamacco. Again, like I said, is it Sassicaia? Probably not, but if you get to the Bolgheri Rosso Superiore, yeah, I might start talking about it then. Um, okay. Vacuums, better than a cork. Yes. Anything you can do to get the oxygen out of the wine, create more of a vacuum. Um, in fact, I just bought, they came, I'm having to let the box decontaminate in the garage, but it's called Re-Pour Wine Savers. And they actually have like some charcoal. It just looks like one of those plastic flat topped things that you would jam into the neck of the bottle and put it in the fridge. But this actually has some charcoal and whatever, and it's supposed to help take the oxygen out of the wine. And so, based on the fact that Master Sommelier said that it was amazing product, I of course am a sucker for that, so I bought them, and we will test it out and see. But there's all kinds of different products that you can use to do that to keep the out of the wine. All right. When are you going to do the next virtual wine tasting? Well, good question, because I was just going to discuss all of that with you. Next Friday, we'll do it. We're going to do these on Fridays for a while. And I'm telling you, I've just been overwhelmed with how popular this has been. So very exciting. Uh, yeah, I love who has leftover wine. Not an issue at my
I
house.
love that
Yeah.
Miss Johnson just asked the same question I was going to ask you. Versus the product you just mentioned from the Master Soms versus a Corvette.
Yeah. Okay. So Corvin, I bought one when they first came out. All right, because I'm like, oh, this sounds cool, and I can not be pouring bottles of wine down the drain anymore. And so I got it to my house, and then read um, I read something about it, and like where people were saying that nah, some of the wines it was okay with, and some not, and I'm like, and again, really not an issue around my house for an open bottle of wine to go bad. But so it is still in its box, and I will tell you just from tasting, a lot of the wine reps come and taste me with the Corvin, and I literally had one of the reps came, and so she poured it for me, and I'm like, I don't remember this wine tasting this way when you came and brought it to me the first time. I said, just tastes really flat and dull and lifeless. And so I feel like it was maybe the Corvin that did that to that wine, because what the Corvin does. Okay, so if you don't know what Corvin is, it's this device that you would put a clamp to the neck of the bottle. It's got a needle in it. You punch the needle down. It draws and you turn it over, and it's got a little flip lever, and you pour it, and the wine comes out. And then when you take it out, because cork is very porous and forgiving, it will heal up on the opening that the needle made. And so you can use it over and over again. And then when you're done pouring it, it shoots a little bit of argon gas into the bottle. And so it will coat, because argon is inert. It blankets the wine and protects it from the oxygen above it. It doesn't fill the whole entire bottle. It's enough to blanket it. Um, but I feel because wine is a living thing. All right, it's like a person. It changes throughout time, and eventually, it's born, it's put into the bottle. Some of them need to age, some are meant to be youthful and very exuberant, and then you have some that, oh yeah, look at that, I forgot that was in my cuvee, and it's probably past it, and yeah, so it evolves over time. And so putting that inert layer of inert gas on top of the wine, sometimes I feel like the wines, they need to breathe, and they need to develop and express themselves. And if they don't, maybe I've found it a couple times with wines that I have tasted under Corvin. But I wouldn't discount it, because the majority of the wines I've tasted with it have been fine. So yeah, it is a nice gadget to have, because again, you're not going to be dumping your bottles of wine down the drain. So yeah, very nice. Oh, okay, very nice. Love that news. Okay. All right. So actually, I'll keep an eye out for any more questions here. But so, like I mentioned, we're going to do the next virtual wine tasting on Friday, May the 1st. It will also be at 5:30. We also have some other things in the wings and waiting. And so we're going to start doing blind tasting Tuesdays. And so uh, I got the idea because I missed my Tuesday tasting group. All the Psalms here in the Fort Myers, Naples area, we would meet every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock and taste wines blind and not know what they are. And everybody would, talk about the wines. And so it's very, very helpful. But so I missed my tasting group and I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be fun if then you all can purchase the wines ahead of time. And then we'll make sure that they're bagged and sealed so you can't tell what they are. I'll mark on there, this is wine number 1, this is wine number 2, wine number 3. And then we can kind of go through it and talk about what you expect to, like Chardonnay to taste like, or Sauvignon Blanc, or Pinot Noir, or Cabernet. And we'll limit the number of grape varietals. So, I'm not going to be tasting you on Pugnatello, all right, that nobody's ever heard of except for Mr. and Mrs. Garfield. Yeah, so I thought that would be a really, really fun thing to do. So we'll start doing that on the first one we're going to do will be Tuesday, May 5th, and probably also at 5:30. We've got a couple other things planned. On May the 8th, Marcello is going to be our special guest for our 3rd virtual wine tasting. And then on May 15th, we're going to do a virtual wine dinner. All right, it'll be 3 wines, 3 courses. And we're actually going to be speaking with Alessandro Chilai from, he has the wineries Castellari and Podere Monastero in Italy. And so we are going to be live with him, virtually tasting and having a wine dinner with him. And that will be, again, on May the 15th. That one will be at 6:30 because he asked. And so seeing as how he's going to be calling in from Italy, we'll let him do that. So, all right. I like the blind tasting. Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? I hope you all enjoyed that very much. That was my pleasure. And I was very nervous about doing it because I've never done this before. And I was just crossing my fingers that Facebook would work out okay. And so it seemed like it was fine. And so hopefully you all had a lot of fun, maybe learned a little bit, hopefully enjoyed your wines and enjoyed your food. And salute. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone. I had a lot of fun. It was fun doing it. I don't know what to drink first now. I think I go back to the Pinot Grigio. Well, Ms. Johnson, you had a party of 6. Those wines are probably gone. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks, Marcello. And we're going to leave the video up on the website too. So if you want to go back and in case you missed something or joined late, we'll leave it up on the website. So. Thanks, Ms. Smith. Grazie mille. Party 3, wine god. Love you, Barb. Thank you very much. All right, arrivederci, everyone. Thank you so much for all the wonderful comments. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
What did Mrs. Smith